Good morning, Elargu Shubhodaya. This month is extremely special personally to me as well. The theme of the month happens to be mentor, and we all have our own ways of defining what mentor is to us. What I feel about the aspect of teaching is that our teachers, and I don't know, this is a personal opinion, but I feel teachers can't talk about themselves, as teachers. Students can't talk about their teachers. We don't, because we don't feel we're worthy enough, is what I feel. And so, who talks about teachers? And yet, they are like the guiding entity for all of our lives. So, I've had the opportunity this month to be able to honor my own teacher, who I've been learning from for the past. It's my 7th year now learning from Pratima Atreya. And so this is the only thing I'm able to do. Of course, it also happens to be the Guru Purnima month, so it just makes it all the more special for me. Pratima Atreya is somebody who's been singing from the age of 6. And to me, that's from the time you can remember. And of course, we would like to address her as Vidushi Pratima Atreya, but she hates titles. And even the aspect of sitting here to talk to people is not something that she regularly does. She's more comfortable on a stage in order to sing. Some of you were here during the mic test, so you all would have heard her. We're going to hear a little bit of her singing this time, but of course we want to know her journey and what her thought process is when it comes to the aspect of mentorship. That's what we're trying to focus on today. And of course, some of the music that you heard is her gurus and gurus of her gurus as well. So we've tried to really bring in a lot more than just the people in the room today. So without further ado, I'm just so honored and happy to invite on stage Pratima Atreya.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start with a song on Lord Ganesha, the Vigna Vinashaka, formally begin with his name and prayers to him. ಪ್ರಥಮದಿ ನಿನಗೆ ವಂದನೆ ಕೃಪಾಳುವೆ ಪ್ರಥಮದಿ ನಿನಗೆ ವಂದನೆ ಕೃಪಾಳುವೆ ಪ್ರಥಮದಿ ನಿನಗೆ ವಂದನೆ ಕೃಪಾಳುವೆ ಗಜಾನನ ಗಣರಾಯ ಪ್ರಥಮದಿ ನಿನಗೆ ವಂದನೆ ಕೃಪಾಳುವೆ ಪ್ರಥಮದಿ ನಿನಗೆ ವಂದನೆ ವಿಘ್ನ ವಿನಾಶಕ ಗುಣಿಜನ ಪಾಲಕ ದುರಿತ ತಿಮಿರ ಹಾರಕ ಸುಖಕಾರಕ ನೀ ದುಃಖ ವಿನಾಶಕ ನೀ वक्रतुण्ड ब्रह्माण्ड नायका कापाडु अनवरता प्रथमदि निनगे वन्दने कृपाळुवे प्रथमदि निनगे वन्दने गजवदना निन्न रूप मनोहर गजवदना निन्न रूप मनोहर शुक्लांबर विघ्नहर हरन सुतने वरदयाळुवे हरन सुतने वरदयाळुवे नीडु निनगे कृपेय प्रथमदि निनगे वन्दने कृपाळुवे गजानना गणराय प्रथमदि निनगे वन्दने निनगे वन्दने निनगे वन्दने That was the easiest part. It's so good to see all of you here, making the effort to come here and listen to me speak, which I usually don't do. So it's a tough task on me, believe it. People from various walks of life, seeing you here on a pleasant Sunday morning, it feels so good. Feels like a politician, a bit. Thanks to Karishma and Vish and the whole Creative Morning team for making me feel that. Okay, diving into the topic. In the early 15th century, there lived this great saint, Swami Ramanandaji, in a village on the banks of Ganga. This was when the Bhakti movement was happening. All of us have read in our history texts in school. During this time, there was a young boy in the same village who wanted to be the disciple of Swami Ramanandaji. He went to Swamiji and asked, "Mujhe apna shishya bana lijiye." But the society was different back then. The boy was from a different religion. So Swamiji said, "It is tough for me to take you as my disciple. I don't think it is possible." But the boy was desperate to be his disciple, Swamiji's disciple. It was Swami Ramanandaji's routine that he goes early in the morning in the Brahmi Muhurat to Ganga to bathe. Every morning this was his routine. So one day this boy decided, let me go talk to him when he comes for bathing. So every night this boy would go sleep on one of the steps there on the ghats of Ganga. One fine early morning, Swamiji stumbled on this guy, and by accident, Swamiji's feet touched him. He said, "Ram Ram." The boy immediately woke up and said, "You touched me and gave me bodhana of Ram's name twice. So this declares me your student, and you ought to be my guru from now on." Looking at the boy's determination, Swamiji was moved, and he made his disciple also. He taught him later. The young boy I'm talking about is none other than Saint Kabir Das. Saint Kabir Das is the saint who gave us numerous couplets telling us what life is, what is that we are heading towards, what is that we need to really seek in life, so on and so forth. One couplet that I really love of Kabir Das ji is, "Guru Govind dovu khade, काके लागू पाए, बलिहारी गुरु आपने गोविंद दियो बताए." What if one day my guru and Govind himself, the Almighty Lord himself, appear in front of me beside each other. I have to bow down to both of them. Whom do I bow down to first? First, whom do I do the namaskar to? Here Kabir says, O Guru, you are the one who taught me the very existence of Govind and the path to achieve his darshan. So, I do namaskar to you first, and he writes there that he bows down to his Guru first, later on goes to Govind. This is the importance of a Guru in our lives. I see all of you are from different walks of life, different professions. You would see in your offices or wherever you're working various kinds of people. Some people are technically extremely strong but can't convey it in an aesthetic way, in a good way. Some people present things very aesthetically but might not be very technically strong. We, of course, see such people everywhere. There are a handful of them, I'm sure you would have observed, that these are technically extremely strong, whereas as aesthetically also, they're really good. But we find very few of them. What is it to do with these people who have one of these or both of these? It is scientifically proven that it is to do with our brains. The left part of the brain processes or does the job of our STEM subjects, core subjects as we call math and science. Whereas the right part of the brain is what works when it comes to art, literature, music, aesthetics. Recently, I saw an article where Anand Mahindra was mentioning that his employees who had an art background, who had learned some kind of art in their childhood or later, had more to give aesthetically when it comes to designing their cars and stuff. I just read this article, so I thought I'll share it with you. For the right brain, we need some kind of art. My domain being music, I'll obviously talk about it. So, in his article, I also saw that he saw a profound difference in work of those employees due to the art background they've had. By this, we get to know that art has a very positive influence on our lives. Our life gets wholesome. It nourishes the soul. So it changes our life for better. Art is so important. How do we learn it? In today's world, especially after the COVID times, most things are happening online. Online because of the distance between the teacher and the disciple, or maybe time constraints, thanks to Bangalore traffic. At least our city, we know why we do things online. Is that enough? Is that going to give any kind of a personal experience? They say words are just around 7 to 8% of what we need to convey to the other person, the person in front of us. What is summing up to those extra 90 to 93%? It is us seeing each other, the glances that we give to each other, the eye-to-eye contact, the environment around us, the space we are sharing, the positive energy that's flowing between us. All this sums up to more than 90%. So the best way to learn anything is in person. Of course, the teacher tries to give as much as possible, the student tries to take as much as possible, but because online has its own constraints, at least in the offline classes, there is no lag in communication. So while we talk about teachers, in English there are several words like the teacher, lecturer, professor, mentor. Each of them we give to a person. If a person has a PhD in college, we call him a professor. If somebody is still going towards his PhD, we still call him a lecturer. It's to do with education. Primary schools call our teachers as teachers. Whereas in Sanatana Dharma, which has a holistic education system ever since, I don't know, since how many thousands of years, there is a deeper perspective as to what a teacher is. The one who gives us information is an adhyapak, somebody who can read out information and just let us know. Somebody who can give us knowledge along with that information is an upadhyaya. Acharya is one who teaches us a skill. Like we've heard Dronacharya's name, the most famous Acharya. So, Acharya is one who teaches us a skill. A person who can give us deep insight into the subject, in whatever subject we are learning or that person is teaching, he is called a Pandit. Go deeper into this. The teacher who gives you a visionary on a subject, who makes you a visionary, he himself or herself is also a visionary in the subject and makes you be one, is a drishta. Vision is drishti, so that's a drishta. Dive deeper into it comes the Guru. The one who awakens wisdom in us, the one who leads us from darkness to light is Guru. So, Sanatana Dharma has given various depths according to which we can call a teacher what he or she is. While talking about Guru Shishya, I was just looking into some video where Ustad Zakir Hussain ji was talking about teachers and students. He said one statement, a guru gives what a shishya takes. It's like the guru teaches something, it's up to the student to master over it. Do it several times, do it 100 times or 1,000 times, whatever gets him to that state of mastery, and trigger the guru to teach him more. So, what does a disciple learn? What does a guru give? Is dependent on what the disciple is doing. So, it's up to the shishya to trigger the guru to give him more and more. As we move on about teachers, we all remember our teachers in school. All teachers, all those humble teachers who taught us at school. Back then, they were larger than life images for us. Did we all feel the same? We all felt teacher is some larger than life image. But now if we look back, all our classmates are CEOs, lawyers, chartered accountants, some artists. All of us are here. But going back to school, if I just think about those teachers, it is the same humble life the teacher is living yet. So what is keeping this teacher motivated to teach year on year while he knows or she knows that these students will never study 8th, 9th, 10th again, or these students will never ever come back to physics, chemistry of PCMB course in 11th and 12th again, but they're teaching the same syllabus. I know it's their profession, they're earning money out of it, but is that all we are looking at in life? There is something beyond that which these people are not expecting. So they are doing their duties without any extra expectations from us. Like Krishna said, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. In Bhagavad Gita, he says, do your karma. Don't have any expectation not on what phala you get. Without phala peksha, you have to do your karma. Also, when talking about Krishna, I can recall one story where milk goes to Lord Krishna. Milk, doodh. So milk goes to Lord Krishna. Oh Krishna, I have a complaint. Okay, tell me milk, what is it? If I'm today's milk, I'm obsolete tomorrow. My shelf life is only one day. Whereas the products coming out of me, curd, butter, ghee, live longer lives than I do. People call me Amrit. ಇದಂತೂ ತುಂಬ ಅನ್ಯಾಯ ನೀನು ಮಾಡಿರೋದು ನನಗೆ. He told Krishna. Then Krishna said, No, you are Amrit. ನೀನು ಅಮೃತಾನೇಪ. Nobody is denying. That is why you're so important. Without you, none of these products would have been there in the first case. But just understand, to make curd, we'll have to boil milk, cool it, add a bit of curd, wait for 8 hours. And then churn the curd enough so that the butter floats on it. And then boil the butter, strain the residue, strain all the dirt in it, and then you get ghee. So each of us are as relevant as the amount of hardship we've gone through. This is something I wanted to quote because each student should know that it is not a short process of learning anything. So Krishna said, that's why you are for 1 dina, curd 2 days, butter 1 week, ghee 1 month. So the shelf life increases. For us, it's not about shelf life, it's about relevance in our lives, to us and others around us. Okay, then milk calms down, comes back to earth, and starts boiling again to become curd for the next day. In today's world, where everything is a 2-minute noodle, we were just talking about it, everything is fast food samskriti. Go pay $50, you get a plate of idli, eat and come back. Who wants to soak the dals and the rice, grind it, allow it to ferment for 8 hours, then put it into a steamer? That's a long process, isn't it? Whereas a 50 rupee can give us 2 idlis, sometimes a vada as well. So in this fast life, it's very tough for people to understand how long a journey it takes to be something. I can recall one other story where a temple is supposed to be built. They hire a sculptor. They tell him that there are a lot of stones lying in the premises. You just have to sculpt things for us and make it look like a beautiful temple. The sculptor goes to this site where he sees a lot of stones lying. He approaches the first couple of stones. They say, oh my God, you have a hammer and a chisel, so you're going to hit us. Sculptor says, this is my job. If I don't do this, you're just a stone lying on the ground. So please let me do what I can do. I'll shape you into something very nice. Then they say, Nodappa, tumba hodibeda, tadkodakagala. Maybe I'll give you 100 times. You can hit me 100 times. The pillar next to it also says, yes. 100 hits is all that we can take. Go on. Okay, sculptor agrees. He gives them 100 hits each. And then moves on to the next pillar, next stone. There they say, oh, you made them look into such beautiful pillars. So I want to take more hits. I don't mind. Can you please restrict it to 1,000 hits, please? He says, okay, as you wish. The next 2 pillars, he hits them 1,000 times each. Then he moves on to the next stone, who says, oh my God, your hands are wonderful. I saw what happened to them, what they turned into from just stones lying on the ground. So, in Lord's name, I'll just close my eyes. You do what you want. Give me as many hits as you want, but make me something beautiful, something people would look forward to see. He says, yes. He gives this stone 1 lakh hits and turns it into a beautiful idol, a beautiful murti of a Lord. So the first two who took only 100 beats or the 100 hits are the pillars of the temple. The second two who took 1000 hits are the Dwarapalakas. They are on either sides. The only one which took as many hits as the sculptor gave was the only one to which puja was done, was called the deity, was kept in the sanctum sanctorium. So this is what, my friends, learning anything is all about. It's not about beatings or hits I'm talking about. It's about the hardship we have to go through, the grinding we have to go through to shape into something. We have seen several kinds of teachers in various walks of lives. Like we have seen Achrekar ji, Shri Achrekar, teaching in Shivaji Park in Mumbai. He is a humble coach who trains students on a daily basis for decades. But what he has given to the world are the Sachin Tendulkars and the Manjrekars. Similarly, Srimati Annapurna Devi, Vidushi Annapurna Devi, was a great sitarist. She was the first wife of Dr. Ravi Shankar, the famous sitarist Ravi Shankar ji. She never performed outside. She was a great guru, she was a great teacher. But what she gave to the world was the Bansuri maestro, Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia. Pandit Gyan Prakash Ghosh ji, most of us would not even have heard his name. He was a great guru himself. What he gave to the world was Pandit Ajay Chakraborty, one of the topmost vocalists the world has seen is Pandit Ajay Chakraborty. That is what he gave to the world. So, a guru gives a unique experience to the student, making him or her unique as well. You would have heard of sandalwood, gandha for people who know Kannada. We rub it against a stone during any puja. If you're aware of this tradition, we rub it against the stone, get a paste out of it and do the puja. What happens to it? Initially, there is passion. Generally, kids are given this work. Initially, every child is in all josh to do it. Naan martini. Because it looks very interesting. So, with lot of passion, the child holds it, rotates it with some milk or some water 50 times. Then not interested in it. Why? Nothing has come out of it. Then the pressure starts. Oh, even after 50 rounds, there's nothing coming out of this. But do it another 50 times. Slowly comes out the sandal paste, which has a wonderful aroma to it. Similarly, whatever we do, consistency is the key. Having perseverance in whatever we are doing can only make us give out that aura, aroma from us. This is for any art or even sport for that matter. For anything, consistency is the key. So what happens in students is they do get into classes either because parents have put them into classes or they themselves want to go. There is that passion. Slowly after a few months, the initial magic is gone. What next? They can't sound like their teacher, they can't play like their teacher, they can't dance like their teacher. So that pressure phase comes in, where this person wants to give up. This child or this student, whoever is learning, feels like, okay, it's going nowhere, but doesn't want to quit because he or she has enrolled very recently, only in the past few months, which is like nothing. We need decades of training to become whatever we want to be. So this pressure phase happens. That is when perseverance comes into picture. Pursue what each person is doing, do it again and again and again, over months, years, a decade sometimes, only then we can be something that we were aiming to be. In what a guru shapes or does to a student, I feel there are three layers to it. One is the human connect. The student comes, learns, pays fees. So sometimes a human touch to it where we drink tea together in classes. So that is a human connect. And then comes the cultural connect. How to preserve culture? There are two things to it. Recently, my daughter got into some dance examination, and last week she was saying, Amma, Isali bandid examiner, ma'am was saying she's very strict. The one who came last year gave 95 and above to all of us. But this lady, ma'am said, won't give above 80% to anybody. This is bad. Then I said, why is it bad? They are two different people. There are two ways to preserve culture or preserve any tradition or an art. One thing is the gentle parenting that we listen to all the time. All the reels are about that. All the shorts are about gentle parenting, how your child gets affected. But if you just go on appreciating every single move of a child, will the child ever grow? On the other hand is the old traditional style where they never appreciated the student or the child for a very long time. Most times never in front of that person. They would appreciate in front of everyone else, but not in front of this person. It is a thought to my brain all the time, what is right? There is no right, wrong. There is no absolute thing here. But I definitely feel to each his own. Maybe try and strike a balance between the two while teaching or learning. Beyond this, human connect, cultural connect is one other connect I see. The spiritual connect. Spiritual connect where a disciple or a student surrenders to the teacher. Here, surrender is just not submission. Haji wala submission. Not that. It is the trust a student gains that makes him or her surrender to the teacher. Isn't it a wonderful thing to surrender ourselves and blindly follow what the teacher says? And maybe the teacher can shape us into something beautiful that we had never dreamt of. With this, I would want to recall my teachers about whom I didn't speak so far. I initially, of course not formally, learned from my mom. She would sing. She was an Akashvani artist herself. So she would sing at home while doing chores at home, while doing puja at home. I just picked up few songs that she was singing. I would sing while I was playing. That's when they thought, okay, she has a voice, she has a mind to learn, she can pick it up. And they put me into classes to Vidushi Shanta Jayatirthaji. Shanta Jayatirthaji was an Akashvani artist. She was a staff in the Akashvani. I learned from her for a few years. Had a wonderful time with her. Due to distance and time constraints, we had to stop classes. And then, after 2 years of searching, I, to my luck, found Pandit D.P. Harindraji, who eventually became my guru for the next 1.5 decades. If I just start talking about him, I would get emotional. He's no more, by the way. He passed away 10 years ago. He lived a wonderful, long life of 90 years. And I learned from him for 15 long years. I would get emotional if I start talking about him, but had a great time. And I am what I am today because of these three great people that I've had in my life. I was lucky enough to have all of them. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you so much for this today. You're a wonderful speaker and a singer. You were wrong when you said you cannot speak. I think none of us had even a thought somewhere going out of this hall. You're a wonderful speaker, first, is what I would want to say. Now, to my question, I read somewhere that art is fundamental to us. Before we learn to walk, we dance. Before we learn to speak, we sing. And before we learn to write, we draw. Then where is it lost after that?
I was just talking to her and I said, Bina samajhe anand payo man. Only when you don't understand things, you really enjoy it, thoroughly enjoy it. As a child, to every music that the child listens to, it starts just jumping around, even while they are in the crawling phase. So, as you said, yes, it is definitely a fundamental part of our lives. Maybe when the child learns to walk, it forgets dancing and it is not triggered in that direction. It's tough to say an absolute answer to this, but what I feel is maybe if we have smaller kids at home, we trigger them to sing, dance, switch on some music, just dance with them because it's a stress buster even for us, and sing lullabies, which has always been a part of our culture. Sing lullabies, sing while we are giving them a bath, while giving them an oil massage. Maybe that triggers something in them and hope they become adults having all these essences in them. That's all I have to say.
Pranams. So, when you talked about Guru, it made me remember my Guru, spiritual Guru. I could connect each and every word with that you said. Thank you so much. You said you felt pressure. I mean, everyone feels pressure in their journey. Actually, in my childhood, I don't even know who my guru was. I was into Carnatic music. I was initially like, but then my parents said I was not coping up better, so they had to stop. I had to stop going. So, how do what would you tell anyone who would how to continue the pressure, break the pressure, break through the pressure, and pursue what we need to do?
There are two things I would want to take while I'm talking about this. First thing is, yes, during academics, there is so much to study, there is so much to do for just the school that it's tough in today's life for kids to take time out into some art or something. But we also have heard and known that change of activity itself is entertainment. We've even heard our parents say, ಇಷ್ಟೊತ್ತು ಮ್ಯಾಥ್ ಓದಿದ್ಯಾ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೊತ್ತು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಪೊಯೆಟ್ರಿ ಓದು that will be a nice change, right? While we were in our 10th grade or 12th, this is what our parents told when we said we are bored of studying this. So that way, a bit of art somewhere, I know it takes a back seat during board exams because that is what is going to fetch us a job, fetch us a career, most probably, and gives that money into our accounts, runs the kitchen through our lives. Yes, that is important. What after work time? I'm not telling about the 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. evening thing. All of us retire, and I'm sure all of us are planning some financials for our post-retirement times. Mutual funds, SIPs, FDs, some real estate. We've taken care of the financial bit of it. But what about the time? Suddenly we aren't going to office anymore. We are left with 10 hours of work time and 4 hours of travel time if it's in Bangalore. So 14 hours a day we are free. What do we do then? So investment is just not financial. It has to be a spiritual investment. Spiritual here, I don't mean God, puja part, to each his own. Somebody finds solace in doing puja. Somebody finds solace in some meditation. Somebody finds solace in waiting for capturing a tiger for 3 days on the branch of a tree. To each his own. So I think we have to encourage and try our best so that kids have something. At least they can hum to some tune while driving back from office and feel good about it. Maybe that is what we can give them if we push them a little into art and sport as well, because they have a healthy life ahead.
Hi. Firstly, thank you for this session. I've known you, and it's been a great journey to be around you and to be like surrounded around you. My question is, do you think inclination towards any art has any age? To seek proficiency in what you do has any age barrier? Because like hear a lot that age is not a barrier. You can learn. You can pick up an art or a skill at 40 and you can ace at it. But I think everything has a shelf life, right? So, what is your opinion on that?
The preference is always childhood because the brain is blank. I'm sure all of us are thinking about what happens tomorrow. Thank God it's a Sunday morning. If this was Sunday 7 p.m., what would be running on our brains? What for tomorrow's breakfast? What for lunch? And okay, that thing I need to submit. Oh, I haven't done it. I have to go home, rush back and do that as well. Oh, I didn't call my cousin of wherever, whichever city. Oh, he or she had called. I haven't returned the call back. I saw that missed call 3 days ago. We have all this running on our brains. That is why childhood is important. That is why it is important to learn something during childhood. But time is something which is irreversible. In case you haven't done something in childhood, you could as well try pursue it during adulthood. Make some time. It's like having a full meal at a restaurant. Our lives are like that. Having a full meal at a restaurant. But still, when you find the ice cream there, it melts and sits between the food in your stomach. You still want that one scoop of ice cream. So that's one thing. And adulthood, it's not easy. I keep telling all my students, chores at home or whatever work we have is like a tumbler of water. Contain it into a tumbler. It is one tumbler of water. Put it into a plate. It's spread across the plate. Just throw one tumbler of water here. How much space does it take? Our lives, our professions, chores at home, the responsibilities at home is like this tumbler of water. Wherever you spill, it occupies all the space. It's up to us to contain it into something, prioritize this and that, now and then, make some time, do what really gives us some pleasure.
Namaskar. Can you hear me? Namaste. So I have a little metaphorical question. Taking the classical arts into mind and context, in the case of gurus and shishyas, sometimes you see the shishya becomes much more famous and bigger than the guru itself. On the other hand, you see gurus who become very, very famous, very eminent, and the shishyas or disciples merge into the background. So I want to know your thoughts on this. That's one question. And my second question is very basic. Is it difficult for women students to pursue the classical arts after a certain age or phase of life?
Okay. I'll answer the second question first, easier one and a shorter one. See, it is tough for a woman or a man. Not that men can have a very relaxed, sweet life. They are also going through the same grinding as we do. Just that our responsibilities are spread across through the day, through the week, through the weekend as well. That is one thing where, yes, it is a challenge. But don't we like challenges? Because people, while grinding batters in stones, had time. While we just switch something on and it grinds the batter, we can't say we don't have time. We have to make it. While we were writing letters, I was just talking about this also to somebody. While we wrote letters, and it would reach somebody after 6 days, 7 days, depending on the distance. Now a WhatsApp message is message is reaching in 1 or 2 seconds. The next couple of seconds, that person has already got the message. Yet we don't have time. Yes, we don't have time. That I completely agree to. The kind of bindings we have, the kind of responsibilities in the modern world are much different. But I think there is no choice, because all this, maybe if we are thinking about kids or adults at home, everyone will travel with us only to some extent. Beyond that, it is like a train journey, which we all know about. Everyone comes in some station and gets out in some station. It's us who are doing that journey from A to Z. So it's up to us to make time. That's one thing. Second thing is, there is a saying that it's the father, the only person on earth who can tolerate or who would want you to grow beyond him, outgrow him, is the father. But I also add a guru into it. Isn't a guru's situation a win-win situation? If my student is not really good, yet learning from me for a long time, I'm good as a guru. If my student outgrows me, I'm even better then. So that way, that is one thing. Also, I keep telling, we call this a boxing, right? A handful. Each one's hand, the size differs. I don't know if I should call it God, destiny, but after maybe in a concert, someday I ate a small Amodini pill, which we take for throat enhancement or any kitch, it'll just make sure it is not there. There was a tiny, very, very tiny stick in it. Stick, not even a stick. That was stuck to my tiny tongue there. I gargled on stage, it never went away. I drank 1 whole liter of water, it didn't go. What was my mistake? Then I thought, everything is not in our control. There is something beyond what we can understand, what we can comprehend to. So that day I started feeling, that is why maybe our ancestors said, Devar mel bhara haku. Easiest way. Utmost peace within us, at least. So I believe in it that each of our hand size is different. If we are destined, we'll have a bigger hand, more in it. If we are less destined, maybe we'll have a smaller hand, less of it in it. Maybe we're getting something else, more of something else somewhere else. I just believe in this.
Thanks, ma'am. I relate to your examples too much. Like the example you gave from the pillar of your temple till the sculpture of that Daitya, goddess. And I just want to ask, like, I'm learning flute from last 3-4 years, and there are two type of learnings. Like in folk music, we just do self exploration. Like whatever we want, we can play. But in classical singing, there is some restriction. Not restriction, but we just follow some things. But there is one point about self-exploration, like Pandit Kumar Gandharva did. Like when he was in Madhya Pradesh, throughout his disease, he explored that Kabir Das, local folk music, but he did self exploration and he converted that point or transformed that particular music in new way. So how to bridge this gap from folk music to classical singing? How to learn out of it and do self exploration? Yeah.
So, whether it is folk music or classical, there are some restrictions to anything that we do. There is nothing which is restriction free, is what I feel. If you call it a restriction, yes, maybe. Or maybe for better creativity, you need to give less resources, is what I believe. An architect is constructing a house here in Bangalore with a plot of 20 by 30. Whereas the same architect is constructing something in an estate somewhere in Chikmagalur or Sakleshpur or Madikeri. There is 1 acre space. Both the places, it's the same architect, but does the architect think similarly? No, because here there is space constraint. There, it is not space constraint, it is the environmental constraint. You'll have to build the house accordingly, so no forest animal can just come to your door. So you have to resist your house from the forest area, things like that. Whereas in Bangalore, with a 2030 plot, an architect would think, where else can I give a small window for some air and light? That way. So it is not restriction. All the restrictions we are seeing in music, especially in music or any art, who gave us these restrictions? Like you have to drive on the left hand side only. That was done by a government. But who did these restrictions? Somebody who broke his or her head for the art throughout their lives thought that by giving such restrictions, maybe we are triggering more creativity out of a person. Right? If I give you one whole box of matchsticks and ask you to write ask you to write maybe 1 to 10 numbers, you will just take as many matchsticks as you want. What is the creative part of it? Whereas if I just restrict you to 25 sticks, then you'll think, how can I make it possible? Where can I reduce one stick? That is where creativity barges in. I think for creativity, that little amount of restriction is required. And how to practice for folk music and classical, I think it's alike. No matter what music it is, there are only 12 notes. It's half as easy as English, I say. Right? A to Z is 26. Saregama Padani is just 7. There are 5 notes which have another form of them. So it sums up to 12. It's half as easy as English, I say.
I have a very basic question, something that I've always wondered. How do you find a guru that suits you? I mean, in your talk, you mentioned it took you 2 years to find your guru. I mean, how do you know when you find? And this other thing that I always struggle with is the Guru Shishya Parampara. Maybe it's the sign of the times we're living in. It's how do you dedicate yourself to one guru for decades and decades? And another thing, which is a personality related thing, is how do you let go and trust this other person so fully to guide you, chisel you into shape?
How do you find a guru? I was lucky because my mom used to sing and we went to a couple of them or 3-4 people and she didn't find it satisfactory enough the way they taught, because I had already learned from Vidushi Shanta Jayatirtha for around 3 to 4 years and she had also already seen how she taught. So once a human brain goes in a direction, you can't erase it completely. This is what happened in my case. So we saw her teach in such a wonderful way, the kind of dedication she gave and the depth in which she taught. Anything below that benchmark was not satisfactory. So I was lucky enough to have parents who dug deep into it and finally found my guru for me. That is A. Second thing was, how do you learn from the same person for decades? We always feel once you start learning 3-letter words, you can't start teaching ABCD. That way, every child in preparatory or first grade would have been the teacher for pre-nursery school. Or once you start learning 3-word sentences, you can't start teaching words. So, it is the duty of a guru to keep achieving more and more, dig deep more into the subject, and be not just about the disciple. That will keep the disciple coming back to the guru for decades, because that difference has to remain. It's not to do with the disciple, it's to do with the guru. If I stop learning further, within 10 years or 12 or 13, someday my relevance to my students will go away. So it's up to me to keep getting more knowledgeable, to learn more number of things, more number of techniques, how to achieve them, and things like that. Third thing you asked was how to trust. Yes. Let go. Okay. Let go, as I said, surrender through trust. It takes a long time. The first few years, the guru also teaches just because they want to have more number of students. No one knows in which student there is a Sachin Tendulkar. So, Achrekar trains maybe 100 students every year or more. In which student there is a Hari Prasad Chaurasia. That's why maybe Annapurna Devi taught more students. So, that is the thing. That is a gamble every guru plays. Because all of us want to impart what we already know. So, the baseline for the student is much higher than what ours was. Right? So, that way, surrendering oneself, it happens over time. Surrendering is just not for the student, it is also for the guru. I've also heard instances where, while we are speaking, a guru needs to be like a pot of water. While you put the pot with a thread tied, you know how well works. There is water in the well. You tie a rope around a pot. You dip it in. The water won't fill automatically. The pot has to surrender itself to water, to gain knowledge. But while giving back also, it is the pot's duty to bend. So, to be a teacher, that is one thing. You have to bow down to your guru and learn things. As well, bow down here, not the namaskar way, but go to the students' level and make them understand what it is. So, by time, maybe they gain the trust, or some people just don't. It also depends on what vibes both of them share between the two. So, it's a specific thing.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Manik. The question I wanted to ask is now in both in the teaching, let's say with the students and with the, let's say, the parents, there is a lot of impatience. And so in that phase, how do you handle that phase to kind of make them come over that part? And again, now before you used to probably have to handle only with the students, but now also with the parents who are very impatient about what is kind of going on. So how do you deal with that phase and make them to kind of come out of that and make them feel comfortable that this is going to lead to something?
Of course, as a music teacher, the kind of enquiries that I get have been, how many days does it take for my child to sing like you? Or how many months does my child need to perform? My answer would be, Vidwan Balmurli Krishna ji, all of us know Balmurli Krishna. So I just quote his example. He performed at the age of 3 much, much, much better than what I'm doing at 30 or 40 or whatever my age was at that time. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to this. Maybe your child is born with so much talent that the child sings better than me in the first month itself. So it is not an absolute answer. I just answer this. Also, I quote Bhimsen Joshi ji, who struggled so much to get a guru. At the age of 11, Bhimsen Joshi ji left his house. What is 11 years old? Children today have to sleep with their parents even at 11. I'm a mother of 2. I know what it means when they are 11. You're still banging your head to send them to school, to tie their shoelace. But at the age of 11, he had so much clarity that he went out of his village, he traveled and stayed in his guru's house to get some knowledge from him. Another example is of Ustad Bismillah Khan Sahab, who was a great Shehnai maestro. So, Ustad Bismillah Khan, it so happened that he held the Shehnai, and I have heard he took 1 year to get any sound out of it. 1 year, he would just sit and blow. After a year, the first sound appears. That is the kind of patience people have had in the past. And that is the only thing which can fetch us more knowledge or get us deep into that subject. So I just quote such illustrations to parents who come and ask for 2-minute noodles.
I was just reminded of this Netflix film, The Disciple by Chaitanya Tamhane. So from that, I wanted to ask that how do you, maybe just from your point of view, how do you strike a balance between like staying true to your art and craft, but then still making a living, since this is, of course, it has to pay the bills as well, but yet, how do you get that balance?
Aren't we all two persons in one body? For a man who wants to aim at that AVP position there, the same man who comes home and feels, oh my God, maybe I should teach my kids more trigonometry. They should know the basics of trigonometry better. What they are doing is not okay. Isn't that two men in the same body? For us women, aren't we all that woman who wants to pursue and fly high in your career? Or aren't we all that woman as well who wants to keep a clean house, who wants to cook for the family, who feels, okay, no matter what a cook does, he or she cannot be us. So we are all two persons in one body, and we are always pulled on both ends, which is what maybe we call midlife crisis. All of us go through this at some point in time. I'm sure the early 20s kids here or somebody not even 20 don't understand this. But 30 to 50, I'm sure all of us do understand this. So it is a balance. It is a balance. So there are teachers who are breadwinners for their family. There are teachers who are not. Both of them have their fees, which is very important for them. The only thing I feel is, don't make the student feel that you are living out of the money that that student is giving every month. Don't make the student feel that is the only thing I feel. And while we artists as friends, we talk, of course we have colleagues too. So we all meet for lunches or dinners or just meet in a studio and wait for an hour for some recording happening there. In such times, we all discuss about this. This is what we always think. Never let the student know that I am living out of your money. That is one thing that puts the guru down. Or else it's just money. Even the student knows, this 500 rupee, I've earned it today. Next month, if you try to remember where that particular bill went, you'll not be able to recall. But classes, most classes remains in your memory, just that it is a monotonous thing. It's happening in the same room with the same person. Maybe some of them just get erased out of memory. Or while you take that subject or that rag, in my case, maybe the student remembers, okay, this is what teacher was saying. Because I, even to this date, remember a few classes of what my Guruji said. While I'm singing a Purya, I always recall the way he sang Purya, the way he taught me, the extra sangatis he did. And he said, see, these are special Purya sangatis, never let them go off your brain. And things like that.
Hi, ma'am. Good morning, and thank you for this wonderful talk. And like I think he was mentioning, you're as good as at speaking as you are at singing.
It's pleasure. You don't know how scared I was.
Right. So I think I have two things. One is an experience to share, another is a question. So experiences from what the first question he asked, how do you, and you were talking about how children can be inculcated to be a part of music. And so I remember I used to be in Gurgaon back in when I was second standard. And my parents were always inclined towards classical music. So a lot of programs used to happen in Siri Fort Auditorium over there, from top-notch Bhimsen Joshi to everyone possible, right? And I had a privilege of watching them as a kid, I wouldn't understand anything. Okay, imagine a first year kid, right? They would not, and I was just sit and I would like just, so I would see people nod their heads like this. And in my head, I'm like, they're like, nahi, maza nahi aa raha hai, maza nahi aa raha hai. Like, so that was my thing. So it was, I mean, as a child, and then a lot of times it used to happen that because the seats used to be so full, right? So somebody would be like, why don't you come? Why don't the kids come on the stage? And luckily, I was a silent kid, so I would just silently sit and hear. So I think thanks to my parents, I've inculcated, sense of music and trying to listen to as many genres as possible, from classical to different languages. So that's one thing which I wanted to share. And as you rightly said, like that small bits that you do help grow that creativity in yourself. And second one is that in today's generation, the 2-minute thing with what you were saying, right? Have you noticed any change in your students, especially who are kids, from the time that I'm not really sure since how long you've been teaching, but since okay, awesome. So yes, there is, yeah. So I want to understand with all this new generation of TikTok and shorter format, where even as adults, I feel our attention span is going lesser and lesser by the day. Have you seen a change to it, and have you had any, like, of course you would have made efforts to adapt to it, right? So what is your experience on that?
And first of all, thanks for sharing the experience. That is something unexplainable. You can't put it into words. Acha, good ka taste kaise hota hai? Can somebody answer with words? How does jaggery taste? Or what's the difference between So we have this proverb in Kannada, Ballavare Ballaru Bellada Ruchiya. जिसने गुड़ चूस के देखा है उसी को बस मालूम है इसका टेस्ट क्या है. Nobody else can explain it to somebody. So what I feel is, any art for that matter is like that piece of good. Only if you have tasted it, you know what it really tastes like. That's one thing. And regarding the students coming in, the children, I feel one thing is they ought to sit there because their parents force them to. So we have all sorts of kids, some of them silently not enjoying, still silently sitting. Some of them showing on their faces that they are not enjoying this. अब क्या करें? हम भी कभी बच्चे थे. Not that I also liked it as a child. If I was asked to practice in the evening from 6 to 7, I would envy all my cousins playing on street. So that happens to every child. What we do is, with adults, we don't have enough jokes coming in. I call my students bro. Let's come to that. Yeah, bro, what did you do this whole week? To at least keep them occupied and entertained and communicated with. So that is one change I have made in myself. Hi babe, hi bro is how I speak to my students. That's one thing. Another small change I've made is, unlike what our gurus traditionally did, I teach them small songs after every raag that they can perform in front of people. Or some shlok at least. So the parents are feeling happy about it. So Shiva Panchakshar Stotra. So the grandmom who gets this kid is very happy. Arey dekho bacche ko Shiva Panchakshar aa gaya aise. That is what I've changed.
And just an extension to it, how many kids these days actually come not because their parents want
There is no kid who wants to learn an art leaving playback outside there. I wasn't one. I love play more than music. But never knew when I was 9 or 10 or 11 that that would be my profession going ahead. So my father had this insight for me. My father would always say, I want to see you as a musician. While after I finished my 12th, that is second PU during our times, I wrote the CET. My mom's like, yeah, let her get into some engineering course, just that it should be in Bangalore, so she goes to Guruji's house. Nothing is disrupted. My father said, I don't want you to study further. It's up to you if you want to really study. Then I said, no, I want to study something which gets over by 1 p.m. So by afternoon, I want to be free because I was doing a bit of theater then, a bit of emceeing. I used to be an RJ in Rainbow Channel, Akashvani. I did some special programs there. So all this was running. I had just 2 legs to step into 4-5 boats. So I wanted something that gets over early. So ever since that time, it is not like somebody runs behind their passion. Or when I was 6, when I was admitted to classes to Shanta auntie, little did I know that I'll pursue it as my career. I was more interested in her daughter who was my age, so that I could get to play with her after my class is done. That is what dragged me back to her house. Her kids were around mine and my brother's age, so I loved playing with them. That's it. So it is just that phase. बचपना मतलब बचपना ही है. निकल जाएगा ना, वो भी, that will pass too. Just that parents have a little bit of extra effort. Do we have a choice? Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I mean, it's absolute pleasure listening to you speak as well as sing. My question was, you are wonderfully placed in the terms of how good you are as an artist, as well as you have been teaching for last 20 years or so. And have you ever had an experience of coming across a student where you see like this person is not going to make it? And at that time, how do you, what is the, in your opinion, right way to handle it? Like, do you tell this person that, okay, maybe this is not your thing, or maybe you should continue persisting? Because the examples you gave, like some 3 years old can perform better than what some people can do after decades. And whereas some people take an year just to get a sound, the first sound of an instrument. So how do you know, or how a teacher as well as student, that probably this is not my thing, I should try something else, or should I persist?
There are various students who've come in with all that you've mentioned. I've had a few students who could not even catch hold of the sir, even after I played it on the harmonium. Played it very loud and asked them to match along. And just recorded sir and asked their parents to play for the child. And tried it for a couple of months and didn't work. Then I just suggested to the parent to better send them to some bhajan class where it's happening in a group than this one-on-one sessions or one with 2 children sessions where they have to deliver. Maybe it is a pressure on a child as well, which many a times as adults we don't think. But if we dig deep into it, we'll understand that there is a pressure on a child to deliver right then and there in front of the teacher. Maybe that is also there. So I give it a couple of months' time. And in the past, I have told a few people to enroll them into some bhajan classes. So just they sit in a group and sing. There's no individuality, so there is no pressure of performance. That has happened. I have had a couple of students who really can't make it, but are so dedicated. I don't feel like asking them to stop doing this. All the musicians in the past have said that you become a musician in the third life. एक जन्म पागल बन के सुनो, एक जन्म पागल बन के साधना करो, तो तीसरे जन्म में आप संगीतकार बन के पैदा होंगे. This is what they say. अब जो हम अपने जन्म के बारे में कुछ नहीं जानते हैं, एक लाइफ के बारे में इतना नहीं जानते हैं, how can we talk about 3 janmas is what I feel. So I just continue teaching some people, continue teaching simpler things to them. So it depends.
I have 2 questions to ask. Firstly, you've been a singer and a teacher for so many years. Have you ever been tired of doing the same thing again and again? And also one more question. I am into Bharatnatyam. I learn Bharatnatyam. I learn keyboard and also Carnatic vocals. So I wanted to know, how does learning an art from childhood help a child in her later life?
Okay. Getting bored of doing the same thing again and again? Yes, it happens to everyone. So, as a musician, while sitting alone, we don't sit and hum something. That's not the case all the time. Silence is bigger bliss at times. It's more blissful than music at times. A hot cup of chai, looking at rain pouring outside, is more pleasure at times than music. So, yes, like anybody else, anybody who gets bored of going to office day in and day out, it does happen. But the best part is, while the student is leaving the class after an hour session or so, the pleasure you see in them is, I can't put it into words. And I keep telling this in class, we have so many rags. Each rag is supposed to evoke an emotion in us. For adrenaline rush, क्या क्या कर रहे हैं लोग यार, पहाड़ चढ़ जा रहे हैं एड्रेनलिन के लिए, हम तो बैठे बैठे कमा रहे हैं. So it is a wonderful thing. I can at least talk in a perspective of a musician. जो emotions चाहिए ना, जो फिल्म देख के आ रहा है, बैठे बैठे हो रहा है अपनी जगह पे. So that is also something we have. At one place, we are experiencing all those beautiful emotions, an emotion of vastness, and I'm a very small thing in front of it. What you feel in front of a very huge mountain, or what happens to you when you stand in front of the ocean. How small are you? How big are you? Economy class is too small for our legs, but it's the same leg that took us to the ocean. Are we big enough? No. So that way there is that boredom phases. Especially I feel during younger age, when the excitement level was higher. Cross 30, 35, all that will go down. You'll start liking routine. Maybe you will observe in senior citizens, because I do observe this in my parents and my in-laws, that they don't like surprises. Go at 12 o'clock, wake them up for a cake cut for their birthday. They're like, अरे यार 80 बार आ गया birthday, और कितना मनाएंगे? कल काटेंगे ना cake. I just fell asleep now, so I wake up. So as and when you grow, you will not like a lot of surprises. That is also something. But you need another 20, 30 years to get into that phase. One thing is the scientific approach, which I spoke about, the right brain being activated. Especially when you dance and stuff, both the parts of the brain is triggered at once to make sure the connections are strong enough. There are so many researches which say there is less dementia in people who do this. That is all for the later stage of life. But you will start enjoying art once you start earning. Once you start earning. The last day of college was not as boring as the first day at office. Ask people who started working only for the last 2 years. They'll ask their dads, how are you working since 30 years? This is so boring. First salary was good. Second salary, okay. It came into your account, you're happy. Third salary, okay. Office again tomorrow. So once you finish your education and start a profession is when you see actual life and actual boredom. That is when all this comes into picture. That is when you'll start liking art more than you ever did in childhood. Absolutely. Start paying the premium through your childhood. You'll get your insurance later.
In only your opinion, no research, do you put talent above practice and hard work, or practice above talent?
It is a perfect balance to be stricken. Lot of practice without talent is almost not possible. Lot of talent without practice is also not possible. But I would place practice slightly higher among the two, because we've heard this saying where I'm not afraid of a guy who knows 1,000 shots to hit. I'm afraid of this guy who's practiced the same shot 1,000 times. Right? So practice, you take this drink. Take this drink. You do it every day. How many times in a day? So how difficult it is to drink water? It's as easy as that. So that is what practice makes to us, is what I feel. Consistency. So I place it slightly above talent. But talent is like, what kind of hair do you want? घुंघरालू बाल चाहिए कि straight बाल चाहिए? We don't have a choice. Talent is like that.
Following on his question, I think on the similar line, I guess you would have heard multiple times, right? An artist is born versus, perseverance, right? So, like you mentioned, it has to be a balance. But then, how do you actually put in that this is the stopping point, right? Like, hey, you practiced enough and you still aren't that great, right? So maybe you'll never be a great artist. How do you, put that stopping line? Where do you know when to stop or move to something else, right? Because I think when I was a kid as well, like most parents, I went through multiple classes. I went for keyboard, I did drawing, I went for painting. I've done variety of stuff, right? Yeah, like all of us did. But unless it is actually, something you love doing, you won't do it. But again, then comes in perseverance. If you persevere enough, you will eventually start loving it, right? So how do you, define that balance that you're talking about? Striking a balance.
I would answer this with another question. Is perfection a destination or a path?
Perfection is the enemy of progress. So none, I would say.
It is not a destination, it is just a path. So, only on whatever NH4 is what we called. You go to Tumkur, you realize that there is Sirayat, there is Davangere, then you find Hubli Dharwad. When you go there, you'll find, okay, the way this road is going till Bombay. Reach Bombay and you know that this road continues to Surat. So there is no end to it. So it's just a path. Every person has the dissatisfaction of not doing as well as that person wants to do something. All the great musicians, they all get into this mode. Most times, all the time actually. And the toughest thing is, at least as a musician, to listen to your own performance. That's the biggest torture I can have from someone. Listen to my own performance for an hour. You just sit and listen to what you have sung yesterday in the concert. Oh, please. You'll have another 1,000 thoughts going. Arey yaar, ye kya kar diya? This is the feeling in every single avarta, every single cycle, it's the same feeling. So there is no perfection. There is always this dissatisfaction which will keep us going further and further, which also has some mithas in it. There is that sweetness to that dissatisfaction.
We attaching learning art to becoming something someday gives all these things. There are a lot of benefits even if I don't become a singer or a profound artist. It helps me deal with sadness, depression. It helps me deal with old age, as you said. It makes me more creative. There are lots of benefits which we don't acknowledge. So we all behind that goal, that destination, and we forget that we've already achieved many things just by practicing it, pursuing it, learning it.
While preparing for this talk, while Karishma and I were discussing about what I should talk about last week, we were just speaking. What is the yardstick for an art? Is it success? Is it the number of programs that an artist gives? Is it the number of recordings this person is doing? Or what he or she charges per song? None of this is success. It's like, who are you? I am not what my name is. Hi, I'm Pratima. No, I'm not Pratima. That's my name. So that's a very deep thing that cannot be answered with just words. It is just experience that can make us feel a certain way is what I feel. So as you said, the multiple benefits that we have through this, there is no boredom. Even while sitting alone, a person need not get bored. Just looking at a tree or looking at rains or looking at some bee trying to construct something, everything has pleasure in it. So just watching it itself is pleasure. So that is what, as the gentleman mentioned, what is success has no absolute answer to it.
But Pratima, just thank you for, of course, agreeing to talk, but I think for being my guru and for just continuing to teach what your gurus have taught you, which is what your intent has been as a teacher. Thank you so much, just for spreading the music and the joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here this morning. Before we end with our group photo as usual, we want to do a little sing-along, which Pratima has planned for us. So just over to that. Does anybody know this song?
It's the
Yeah,
famous
everybody
song.
knows it.
We can all
Perfect.
sing together. That's the idea. That's it. अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरम् अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं तुम मीरा के जैसे बुलाते नहीं तुम मीरा के जैसे बुलाते नहीं अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभम् कौन कहते हैं भगवान खाते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान खाते नहीं बेर शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं बेर शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरम् अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभम् कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरम् अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभम् कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं गोपियों की केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं रामनारायणं जानकीवल्लभं रामनारायणं जान